Our next presenter is Professor Judith Gobin.
Thank you, everyone, for staying on, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm representing our team, my colleagues, Dr. Ladena Kanhai and Mr. Hamish Asma. We jointly put this chapter together on the environment. As a nation, we can indeed be very proud of some key achievements in the environmental field, even if it did take us some time. Top of my list would be conservation of sea turtles, in particular, the leatherback turtle. It is, I think, perhaps the greatest success story for Trinidad and Tobago. The story started around 1964 with one of Trinidad and Tobago's the oldest club, the Field Naturalist Club, that's now 131 years, I believe, this year. At the time, the turtle sort of research was led by the late Professor Peter Bacon, who was a senior lecturer in my department here at the university. Along with club members, villagers, and the forestry division, they worked feverishly to protect the leatherbacks. The community itself was encouraged to protect turtles and engage in what was very new at that time, this ecotourism activities, creating of guest houses and so on to highlight the very leatherback turtles that they were trying to protect. In other words, there was a resource where they could generate income from. It was really a very good success story. In 2006, all the turtle community groups joined forces to create the Turtle Village Trust, which is an umbrella organization that still is holding today. In 2014, quite some time, much later than 1964, the Environmental Management Agency finally designated the 5 species of sea turtles, which included the leatherback turtle as an environmentally sensitive species. In 2017, the leatherback turtle population and the community at Grand River, with a local conservator, Mr. Len Peters, they were highlighted in renowned naturalist Sir David Attenborough's documentary, Blue Planet 2. So a lot to be thankful for. In terms of environmental legislation, environmental management legislation, that is, there's been much advances, and I'm very pleased to say that it started specifically in 1995, when the EM Act, or the Environmental Management Act, was passed. And we now have about 40 pieces of legislation addressing various aspects of environmental management. Now, of course, this would have built on the older legislation like the Petroleum Act and oil pollution and so on. At the same time, we now have about, of course, 28 or more government agencies, that tends to change, involved in carrying out environmental and associated functions. And of course, they're ably assisted by the efforts of numerous NGOs, and a large number of private companies actually began to contribute. We must be proud of our Main Ridge Forest Reserve, and hopefully you've seen it recently in 2020, and this is a very prized designation. In 2020, the Main Ridge Forest Reserve, which was actually set aside since 1976. It represents the oldest forest reserve in the Western Hemisphere, and it is a popular site for bird watching and ecotourism. And it now has the prize designation of being on the World Network, or listed on the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. And this is done under UNESCO's Man and Biosphere, MAB program. Yes, we have succeeded in various activities: conservation, protection, rehabilitation of our wildlife and their habitats. We have done a good job of protecting and conserving our biodiversity. We have a large number of protected areas, including Ramsar sites, Nariva Swamp, Caroni Swamp, Booker Reef, all of these with the relevant management guidelines to protect our rich and valuable resources. We continue to boast of 2 jewels in our crown: the Eastern Right Nature Center, that was founded in 1967, a world-renowned bird-watching center, leader in ecotourism, and was featured multiple times in the Audubon Society's magazines. It was one of the first nature centers to be established in the Caribbean. And of course, the Wildfowl Trust, that was founded in 1966 and is the 2nd oldest wetland conservation trust in the world. And finally, as a nation, and I'm afraid that obviously there are lots more that I can't really mention in 10 minutes, but as a nation, I'm pleased to say that we have become more educated, more aware of our environment through environmental education and awareness, through NGOs, through clubs, universities, the EMA, the Institute of Marine Affairs as well. And of course, we've moved formally to teaching environmental management, environmental science in schools. In fact, and I'm not going to say what year, when I was at the University of West Indies as an undergrad, I was in the first environmental science class, and there was all 8 of us present at that time. After had these successes, that are some of them pretty old, we have indeed made some grave mistakes, and we are reaping these benefits. I think given the recent deluge, the rainy season, flooding has become very, very regular, almost every day during this season especially. I think we are hearing more persons saying, my area has never flooded before. I've never seen anything like this. And of course, it means that this is really something that we could have avoided. It continues that we have unmanaged development, and the Water Resources chapter talks about that. Illegal reclamation of land, illegal quarrying continues, deforestation, the clearing of hillside, the northern range. All of these impact on our everyday lives. We are sitting, waiting in long hours of traffic. There is flood everywhere, and we are seeing the devastation and the havoc that it wreaks. Development in Trinidad and Tobago is going at a pace, unfortunately, often without adherence to laws and caring for protected areas and areas to be conserved, even as we have specific legislation, for example, the hillside development legislation. Much of it is not adhered to. As was mentioned by Mr. Hira, I think it was in his presentation, there appears to be an obvious lack of implementation and enforcement, even though we have noise pollution rules, water pollution rules, environmental police, we do not appear to be winning the battle. We have very formidable challenges. Often decision makers are making decisions without consulting the real experts and without weighing all of the consequences. And 2 very quick examples of this. Do you recall in 2012 at the very leatherback turtle hatchling communities that I talked about earlier at Grand Riviere, we were highlighted in a very negative light on the BBC News in 2012. There had been an erosion event, as happens all the time in coastal areas, and a uninformed decision, in my opinion, was made to bring a bulldozers in to move the sand. As a result of this, of course, thousands of turtle hatchlings died and numerous eggs were destroyed. Consultation with experts was missing. We also saw the Greenvale floods in October 2018. Residents of Greenvale experienced flooding, the likes of which the country had never seen before. Many have left, never returning to those homes. And it continues. Pollution continues, plastic pollution. We have not moved away from using one-time plastics. After 22 years, decision makers have failed to pass the beverage container bill, which was intended to provide a structure for the collection and the safe disposal of beverage containers. Will we ever move away from this bottled water culture, which is indeed a mega industry with severe negative impacts? And of course, it has not helped having the underperformance of our water suppliers. And I know our earlier speaker also talked about that. Water pollution, agricultural chemicals, sewage, we also heard from our previous speaker. We still, in 2022, have people living in communities on unsewered systems. Mr. Hira mentioned accountability. Polluters should pay, and I feel strongly that also people who make decisions must be brought to account. At the same time, we need to remind ourselves and to remind our decision makers what the true value of these natural resources are. And I know with the economists on board, we recognize it only very recently in the literature as economic valuation of our resources. 2 quick examples. Research showed that coral reefs in Tobago provide shoreline protection. That's the natural function by virtue of them being there. They actually reduce erosion and wave damage at a value between 18 and 33 million US dollars per year. In other words, if they weren't there, then we would have to be paying money to build structures to prevent that erosion. Yet, our coral reef is declining in health due to our own actions. Deforestation, we heard, major threat to climate and the quantity and quality of available fresh water. If we remove forest cover, as we continue to do, there is a direct link to drinking water treatment costs. The more forests, natural forests, that stays in the watershed, then the lower the cost to treat that water, and there won't be the need for bottled water perhaps. Yet 6% of our forests were lost between 1969 to 2000. We heard from our medical colleague, prevention is better than cure. This is indeed the cheaper option if we manage our resources. So how then can we make this message clearer to our decision makers? There needs to be serious considerations. How do we balance development with these economic decisions and not at the expense of the environment? My wish is, if I'm asked, is that we should call for a moratorium on all new hillside and coastal developments. Let us take a step back and ponder, as it were, moving forward for the next 60 years. And this is now about our children. And I know Kevin Ramnarine also, he's a child of the independence, I guess. It is now about our children and our children's children, their futures. These natural resources that we're talking about, it's a component of natural capital. These assets provide us with free goods and services, which we know as ecosystem services. It is all of this that underpins our economy and society and makes life possible for all of us. So how do we do it quickly? Use our knowledge and tools. No need to reinvent the wheel. One colleague mentioned it already. We have invested a lot in our nationals at the university, at the UTT, UWI, at UTT, technocrats in ministries, NGOs. We need to move towards an integrated, coordinated process that seeks to balance development and conservation goals and objectives. Sure, I was going to say that as we hold the red, white, and black very high, I also want to encourage us, and it's just common in the literature now, the blue, what was I going to say? The blue, the green, and the brown. And that's we're talking blue economy, we're talking the green economy, that was mentioned as well. And there's the brown agenda. Together, that's really where we want to be. And as I mentioned, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It's been done before, it's been done in other areas. Let's just join hands and work towards saving this wonderful island of ours. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much.